to release our new study. Our study is called Downtown Prosperity, Neighborhoods Neglected. And what the study does is that it examines the racial impact of the decisions made by the city of Chicago around jobs in the city. For struggling Black and brown neighborhoods, Chicago is cutting jobs and depressing the local economy, but for suburban, wealthy, and white neighborhoods, the city is bringing jobs that are higher paying than the original base that was here. To talk more about the findings of our study, I'm going to bring up Eric Tejas, who is the lead researcher on this project, followed by a community leader named Janet and a researcher named Stephanie Farmer to talk about a little bit more about the study and the impact of the results on our neighborhoods.
Good morning. My name is Eric Tejas. I'm the research and data manager for the Grassroots Collaborative and the lead author on this report. What we found was that the city spends most of its money in downtown thinking that this will generate economic activity that automatically benefits the city. When you look at who is getting these jobs, though, we know that that's not true. Spending billions of dollars in TIF money in downtown has only gotten Chicagoans 1 out of 4 of those new downtown jobs. These jobs went to communities like Lakeview and Lincoln Park and excluded communities like Inglewood and Brighton Park. New downtown jobs were going to areas that already are prospering, have a good wealth base, and have good wages. This type of development creates disparities clearly along racial lines. In the city should not be endorsing policies that shift more money to a smaller group of the city. For all of the city to do well, all of its residents need to do well. Prioritizing downtown development to the exclusion of neighborhoods is an economic development strategy that is failing most people in the city. Our recommendations include measures to make sure our money creates jobs for Chicagoans, allows every resident to share in the economic prosperity of the city, and keeps more money, more public money, more importantly, to be spent on the common good. The intent of this report was to discover whether or not downtown development at all costs, excluding neighborhoods, the mantra of the previous and current administration was really working for Chicago and all of its residents. Clearly it does not. Now that the downtown has been built up, it's been saved, and Chicago has earned a global status, it's time for all of its residents to benefit from Chicago's global reputation. Thank you.
Este reporte habla de la realidad que sucede en nuestras comunidades a la falta de inversión en nuestra comunidad. Solo 12% de latinos más de 25 años graduados de universidad, lo más bajo de cada grupo étnico. Para este año, de escuelas comunitarias en Brighton Park perdieron 7.5 millones. Este año, escuelas comunitarias, además, códigos postales latinos pierden un promedio de 381 puestos en el trabajo. No es justo que nuestras inversiones las utilicen en parques y empleos en el centro cuando pudiéramos en nuestras comunidades crear nuevos empleos y no tener que salir a otros vecindarios con un empleo. Mi esposo tiene que ir a otros vecindarios lejos con un empleo, pero esto fuera diferente si utilizaran lo que nos quitan y utilizan donde no lo necesitamos. Todo sería realmente diferente. Mi esposo y otras familias viviríamos mejor porque prácticamente la mitad de su salario queda para poder llegar a su empleo fuera de mi comunidad. Vamos juntos, alzamos nuestra voz el 15 de octubre en el foro del UFC, que no quede solo en palabras, porque no queremos más injusticias en nuestras comunidades. Gracias.
Good morning. My name is Stephanie Farmer. I'm a professor of sociology at Roosevelt University. The Grassroots Collaborative research report on TIF's investment in job creation in Chicago is consistent with the emerging research on TIF investment in public schools. For example, selective enrollment schools account for less than 1% of all CPS schools, but have received a third of all TIF revenues going to school construction projects. Meanwhile, open enrollment neighborhood schools receive just 48% of TIF funds going to school construction projects, even though they compose 69% of all CPS schools. Recently, Rahm Emanuel's administration announced 3 schools that will get TIF money for school construction projects. One is an overstressed neighborhood school on the southeast side, which I would say is actually a good use of TIF funds for school construction projects. But you also have Albert Abbey High School on the west side, which excludes neighborhood children from attending, as well as Walter Payton, a selective enrollment school on the north side. So these 3 schools that were just recently announced to get TIF funding continue the pattern of uneven TIF funding for Chicago schools. I will say that selective enrollment schools are great public schools. However, at a time when the city is closing 50 neighborhood schools and laying off 3,000 teachers and support staff, expanding exclusive schools should not be the dominant priority of this administration. All children need higher education funding, not just a selected few. And this brings us back to the Grassroots Collaborative report on the city's investment policies in downtown. The report does a tremendous job of highlighting how much of our TIF development strategies benefit or unevenly benefit workers in the Chicago area. We sink over 50% of our TIF development dollars in downtown. That just composes 10% of the geographic land space, 40% of all jobs in Chicago. And now we find out that 3 out of 4 of those jobs go to residents outside of Chicago that do not pay taxes to support our schools and to support our public services. As the city directs our property tax revenues to development that creates jobs for outsiders, it cuts our education budgets and closes our schools, which will make Chicago's labor force less competitive in the future. For example, a recent study surveyed Harvard Business School grads that actually make the locational decisions for their firms reveals that their dominant consideration, where they are going to locate, is the top consideration is the educated status of the labor force. Subsidies for their firms actually ranks at the bottom of their list. So taken as a whole, the emerging research on TIF investment reveals that the program allocates TIF revenues in highly uneven and inequitable ways. We need more balance, evenness, and fairness in the way that TIF revenues are allocated throughout the city. Thank you.
Our study has found that city development results in inequality that destabilizes neighborhoods and jeopardizes the economic future of the entire city. The fact that even in our study period looked from 2002 to 2011, again found that 1 in 4 jobs, only 1 in 4 jobs went to Chicago residents. And yet, even just within 4 years within that period of time, from 2004 to 2008, that from 2004 to 2008, only 4 years within that 10-year period, the city spent over $1.2 billion in the downtown center part of the city. So we're spending billions of dollars on subsidizing corporations and infrastructure downtown, yet the benefits of that subsidy, of that investment, is not going to our neighborhoods. The University of Southern California and the University of California, Davis have the researchers that this year wrote in a research study that concluded that a skilled workforce, high levels of racial inclusion, and progress on income equality correlates strongly and positively with economic growth. As the mayor sets his priorities for a budget that focuses on cuts, he must keep in mind that he'll be cutting jobs that employ city workers, the majority of whom are African American, which will lead to further community deterioration. This isn't a crisis of budgets, it's a crisis of priorities. And Mayor Emanuel must be clear that he's the mayor of all of Chicago, not just the mayor of downtown.